Welcome to History for Sleep. Tonight, you are going to wake up in a place where winter is not something you simply look at through a window. It is something you feel. It presses against the walls. It slips beneath the door. It settles into the floor beneath your feet and waits patiently for the fire to weaken. You are in a small medieval peasant's cottage. Outside, it is still dark. Winter has covered the village in silence, and somewhere beyond the walls, the fields are hard with frost. You are lying on a rough bed of straw. A heavy blanket covers you, but it is not enough. You wake slowly. At first, you are not sure what has disturbed you. The cottage is almost completely dark. You can hear someone breathing nearby. Another person shifts beneath their blanket. A faint creaking sound comes from the wooden roof above you. Then you realize what has woken you. You are cold. Not the brief chill you might feel when stepping outside on a winter morning. This cold has been with you for hours. It has followed you through the night. Your fingers are stiff. Your feet are cold beneath the straw. The air against your face feels sharp. You pull the blanket closer and remain still. For a few moments, you consider simply staying where you are. There's no reason to get up yet. The sun has not risen. The cottage is still dark, and outside there is nothing waiting for you except more cold. But then you notice the fire, or rather the lack of one. Across the cottage, the hearth has almost gone dark. Only a few dull embers remain beneath the gray ash. That changes things. The fire is not simply there to make the cottage comfortable. It is necessary. Without it, there will be no warm water, no cooked breakfast, no light, and very little protection from the cold. You slowly sit up. The straw beneath you rustles. The blanket slips from your shoulders, and immediately you regret moving. The air feels even colder now. You pull the blanket around yourself again and look across the dark room. This is home. It is small. There are no separate bedrooms, no private bathroom, no polished wooden furniture. The people living here share the same space, the same fire, the same air. The walls are made from simple materials gathered close to the village: timber, clay, earth, straw. Everything has a purpose. Everything has been made to survive, rather than impress. A small opening allows a little air and light into the room. The door is thick. The roof is heavy. The walls offer some protection from the winter weather, but they cannot stop the cold completely. You can feel it. You slowly place your feet onto the floor. The ground is freezing. You pause. Then you stand. Somewhere nearby, another member of the household wakes. There is a quiet movement beneath the blankets. Nobody speaks. The morning has not begun properly yet. Each step across the cold floor reminds you just how little warmth remains in the cottage. You kneel beside the ashes. For a moment, you see nothing. Then, beneath the gray layer, there is a faint red glow, an ember, still alive. You carefully move the ash aside. You find a little dry material. You place it close to the ember. Then you breathe gently. The glow brightens. You breathe again. A tiny flame appears. It is small enough to disappear almost immediately, but you protect it. You add another piece of fuel. The flame grows. The cottage begins to change. A faint orange light touches the nearest wall. The wooden beams become visible. The sleeping figures around the room slowly emerge from the darkness. Smoke rises toward the roof. You hold your hands close to the warmth. It is not much, but after the cold of the night, even a small flame feels precious. Soon, everyone will have to wake. There will be work to do. Water will need to be brought. Food will need to be prepared. Animals will need attention. Firewood will have to be gathered. And beyond the cottage, the winter day will slowly begin. For a medieval peasant, winter is not simply a season of beautiful snow and quiet mornings. It is a season of calculation. How much wood remains? How much food is stored? How long will the grain last? Will the roof keep out the rain? Will the fire survive another night? And perhaps most importantly, how much energy can you afford to spend when the cold itself seems determined to take it from you? You look toward the small opening in the wall. The darkness outside is beginning to soften. Dawn is coming. Somewhere beyond the cottage, the village is beginning to stir. A door opens. A distant animal makes a quiet sound. Smoke rises from another roof. The winter morning is beginning. You turn back toward the fire. For now, You are warm enough to continue. You sit beside the hearth and listen to the quiet crackling of the wood. The warmth reaches your hands first, then your face. Slowly, the cottage becomes brighter, and as the first pale light of morning appears beyond the walls, you prepare to discover what an ordinary winter day was really like for the people who lived here. A day of cold, a day of work, a day of simple food, frozen ground, smoke-filled air, and constant attention to the small things that kept a household alive. But for now, you remain beside the fire, listening, waiting, and watching the first light of morning enter the medieval world. The fire has begun to burn again, but the cottage is still mostly dark. You remain beside the hearth for a while, holding your hands close to the small flame. The warmth reaches your fingers slowly. You turn your palms toward the fire, then the other side. It is a simple movement, but this is how the morning begins. Not with an alarm, not with bright electric light, not with a warm room waiting for you, with a fire, and the need to keep it alive. You look around the cottage now that there is enough light to see. It is smaller than you might have imagined. The room is not divided into the separate spaces you are used to. There is no hallway leading toward another bedroom, no kitchen hidden behind a door, no bathroom waiting somewhere in the back. The main living space is here. Everything happens here. Sleeping, eating, working, talking, resting, preparing food. And during the coldest part of winter, simply trying to stay warm. The walls are close around you. Their surfaces are uneven. Some sections are covered with a rough mixture of clay and straw. Other parts reveal timber beneath the covering. The materials are simple because they have to be. This is not a building designed to impress visitors. It is a place built by people who need shelter from rain, wind, snow, and cold. You look upward. The roof is low. Heavy material rests above the wooden structure. There are gaps and imperfections, but the roof does its most important job. It keeps most of the weather outside. The fire gives the cottage another kind of protection. Its smoke rises slowly. For a moment it gathers beneath the roof before finding its way toward an opening. The air is not perfectly clean. Your eyes sting slightly. The smell of smoke clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, the blankets, the wooden beams, even the food. After living here for long enough, the smell would become ordinary. But right now, it is one of the first things you notice. Smoke, cold, damp earth, wood, straw, and the faint smell of yesterday's meal. You look toward the sleeping area. The household is beginning to wake. The people around you have learned how to move quietly in the morning. There is no reason to waste energy. A blanket is pulled back. Someone sits up. A pair of feet touches the floor. Another person remains beneath the covers for a little longer. The fire has made the room warmer, but only slightly. The warmth is concentrated around the hearth. Move a few steps away, and you can feel the difference. Near the wall, the air is colder. Near the doorway, colder still. You begin to understand something important about this cottage. Warmth is not evenly distributed. There is no system spreading heat through every room. There is only the fire, and the closer you are to it, the better. This makes the hearth more than a place for cooking. It becomes the center of the household. People naturally gather around it. Children sit near it. Older people remain close to it. Food is prepared beside it. Wet clothing may be placed nearby to dry. Tools can be repaired beside its light. At night, the fire becomes one of the only sources of illumination. And in winter, it becomes one of the most valuable things inside the entire cottage. You move closer again. The flames have grown. A small piece of wood collapses inward, sending a few sparks upward. You watch them disappear. The fire will need more fuel later. That thought is already part of the morning. Firewood does not appear by itself. Someone has to gather it. Someone has to carry it. Someone has to bring it back to the cottage, and someone has to decide how much can be burned today. Every piece matters. Winter changes the way you think about ordinary things. A piece of dry wood is no longer simply a piece of wood. It is warmth. It is light. It is cooked food. It is hot water. It is another hour of comfort. You glance toward the door. There is still a faint darkness beyond it. The village outside has not fully awakened, but you know that soon it will. Someone will begin moving through the cold streets. Animals will need attention. People will need water. The day's work will begin. and you are not ready to step outside yet. You understand why. The cottage may be cold, but outside it is colder. The wind can move freely across the fields. There is nothing between your body and the winter air except your clothing, and your clothing is not designed to create the kind of warmth you are accustomed to. It can trap some heat. It can protect you from wind, but it cannot make winter disappear. You look down at what you are wearing. The fabric is rough. The layers are practical. There is no modern thermal material, no lightweight insulated jacket, no perfectly sealed boots. The clothing has been made to last. It has been repaired, patched, worn, and repaired again. Everything in this cottage carries evidence of use. Nothing is casually replaced. A broken bowl may be repaired. A torn garment may be stitched. A wooden tool may be reshaped. A blanket may be passed from one person to another. The household depends on making things last. You sit beside the fire again. Someone places a small container near the flames. Water will soon be warmed. Another person begins preparing the morning food. The smell of grain slowly fills the room. It is not a rich breakfast. There is no abundance, but it is warm, and warmth changes everything on a winter morning. You watch the fire. Outside, the first gray light has appeared. The darkness is slowly retreating, and you listen as the medieval village slowly wakes around you. The cottage is brighter now, but the warmth remains close to the hearth. You can feel it on your hands and face. Move a few steps away, and the cold returns. This is the first thing you notice as the household begins its morning. The fire does not heat the whole cottage. It creates a small island of warmth. Everything beyond that island remains cool. You look toward the place where you slept. The bed is little more than a wooden frame covered with straw. The straw is uneven beneath you. Some of it has shifted during the night. Some has been replaced more recently than the rest. It is not soft in the way a modern mattress is soft, but it is useful. It lifts your body slightly from the cold ground. It also provides a little insulation. The blanket lying over it is just as practical. It is thick enough to provide warmth, but it is heavy and rough. You pull it aside and examine the straw. Small pieces cling to your clothing. A few have worked their way into the fabric. You brush them away. There is no reason to complain. This is simply what a bed is. A place to sleep, a place to recover enough strength to begin another day. Around you, the rest of the household is waking. The cottage slowly fills with quiet movement. Someone folds a blanket. Someone gathers a few objects from beside the sleeping area. A child remains close to the warmth. Another person approaches the hearth and adds a small piece of wood. The flames rise. For a moment, the cottage becomes warmer. You understand why people would sleep close together. In a small house during winter, bodies provide warmth. A family sharing the same room is not unusual. Privacy is limited. Space is limited. Warmth is limited. The household makes use of what is available. You look at the walls again. They are thick in places, but they are not perfectly sealed. You can sometimes feel air moving through tiny gaps. The difference is especially noticeable near the doorway. Cold air enters whenever the door opens. That means every opening of the door matters. A short visit outside can bring a rush of winter into the room. You can imagine why people would keep the door closed whenever possible. The cottage does not have to be perfectly warm. It simply has to be warmer than outside. That is enough. You walk slowly around the room. There are only a few possessions. Wooden bowls, simple containers, tools, clothing, blankets, cooking equipment, perhaps a small chest, perhaps a stool or rough bench. Nothing takes up space unnecessarily. Every object has earned its place. The room itself is part of the household's survival. The walls protect you from wind. The roof keeps away most of the rain and snow. The hearth provides heat and light. There is no separation between comfort and necessity. They are the same thing. You hear movement outside. The village is awake now. The sound reaches you through the walls. A person walking, an animal calling, a wooden door opening somewhere nearby. The distant sound of work beginning. Soon, you will have to leave the cottage as well. But first, there is breakfast. A simple pot sits near the hearth. The contents are being warmed slowly. There is no elaborate meal waiting. The food must be made from what the household has available: grain, perhaps some vegetables, maybe a little preserved food. Whatever can be stored through the winter becomes important. You watch the steam rise. Even the steam feels comforting. Warm food means more than taste. It warms the body from the inside. You receive a small portion. The bowl is warm against your hands. You hold it carefully. For a moment, you do not eat. You simply feel the heat. Then you take the first bite. The food is simple, but after waking in the cold, it feels satisfying. Around you, the household eats quietly. There is no need for elaborate conversation. Everyone knows what the day requires. There will be work, there will be cold, there will be more firewood to gather. The meal ends quickly. There is little reason to linger. The fire needs fuel, the animals need attention, and daylight is limited during winter. You stand and look toward the doorway. A faint line of white light surrounds its edges. Outside, the sun has risen. The day is beginning properly now. You move toward the door. Before opening it, you pause. The cottage feels warmer than it did when you woke. The fire is burning. The food has been eaten. Your hands have recovered some feeling. But you know what is waiting outside. Cold air, frozen ground, wind, and work. You place your hand on the wooden door. The wood is cold beneath your fingers. You push. The door opens slowly. Immediately, the winter air enters the cottage. You feel it against your face. The warmth disappears from your skin almost at once. Beyond the doorway, the village is pale beneath the morning sky. Frost covers the ground. The roofs are quiet. Thin smoke rises from several cottages. People are already moving between the houses. You step outside. The cold is sharper than you expected. You pull your clothing closer around your body. Behind you, the fire continues to burn. For a moment, you look back. The small orange glow inside the cottage seems almost inviting. Then you turn toward the village. The day has begun. And somewhere nearby, more firewood is waiting to be gathered. More work is waiting to be done. You take your first steps across the frozen ground. The cottage remains behind you. Small, dark, warm only around the hearth. But it is home, and tonight you will return to it again. The door closes behind you, and the warmth of the cottage is immediately replaced by the sharp winter air. For a moment, you simply stand there. Your breath appears in front of your face. The ground beneath your feet is hard with frost. You pull your clothing closer and look back toward the cottage. A thin thread of smoke rises from the roof. Inside, the fire is still burning. But you are outside now, and the warmth of the hearth already feels far away. You begin walking. The village is small. There are no paved streets, no lamps, no signs, only narrow paths between cottages, barns, fences, and patches of frozen ground. The winter morning is quiet. Most of the sounds come from animals. A chicken moves somewhere near a wall. A cow shifts inside a nearby shelter. You hear the soft movement of people beginning their work. Everyone seems to have somewhere to go, and there is plenty to do. You are heading toward the place where firewood has been stored. The household cannot simply burn wood without thinking about tomorrow. Winter may last for months. A supply that seems large at the beginning of the season can disappear surprisingly quickly, so wood has to be gathered, carried, dried, and stored. The work is part of everyday life. You approach a small stack of branches and logs. Some are dry, others are damp from recent weather. You select the pieces that will burn most easily. The smaller branches are useful for starting the fire. The larger pieces will keep it burning. You lift an armful. It is heavier than it looks. The cold makes your fingers stiff, and the rough bark presses against your hands. You adjust your grip. Then you begin walking back. There is no wheelbarrow waiting for you, no vehicle, no machine. The wood moves because someone carries it. You understand why fuel is precious. Every piece has required effort. Someone had to find the tree. Someone had to cut it. Someone had to divide it. Someone had to carry it. Someone had to stack it beside the cottage. Only then can it become warmth. You pass another cottage. Smoke rises from its roof as well. A person stands outside breaking smaller branches. They give you a brief glance. There is no need for conversation. You are both doing the same thing, preparing for another cold day. The village slowly becomes busier. A man leads an animal toward a shelter. Someone carries a wooden bucket. Another person walks toward the fields. Children remain closer to the cottages, where the adults can keep an eye on them. The sunlight is beginning to spread across the roofs, but the warmth has not arrived with it. The morning remains cold. You carry the wood through the village. Your arms begin to ache. The weight is not enormous, but the distance makes it tiring. By the time you reach the cottage, your hands are colder than before. You place the wood beside the hearth. Some of it must remain dry. Some will be used later. Some must be kept for the following days. You look at the pile. It suddenly seems smaller than you expected. That is another lesson of winter. Supplies always look different after they have been used. A full stack of wood is comforting. A half-empty stack makes you think. You return to the hearth. The fire is still alive. You add one smaller branch. The flame catches quickly. Warmth begins to spread again. You hold your hands close. Your fingers slowly loosen. The simple act of warming them feels satisfying. Then you look around the cottage. Morning light has entered through the small opening in the wall. The room is clearer now. You can see the rough texture of the walls, the wooden beams, the straw bedding, the containers arranged along the edges. There's very little space to waste. The cottage is not empty, but neither is it crowded with possessions. Most objects are practical. A wooden spoon, a bowl, a knife, a pot, a stool, a few tools, clothing folded or hanging nearby. Everything has a purpose. The household depends on these things. A broken tool is not simply inconvenient. It can make work harder. A damaged pot can make cooking difficult. A torn blanket can make a winter night colder. The cottage is therefore not just a shelter. It is a collection of things that help the household survive. You sit beside the hearth for a short while. The warmth feels good, but there is still work waiting. The animals need attention. You rise again. Before leaving, you glance toward the fire. It is burning steadily now. You do not need to worry about it for a little while. You step outside once more. The winter sun is higher now. The village is fully awake. The paths are busy with quiet movement. People carry water. Animals are fed. Tools are prepared. The day has taken shape. You begin to understand that life here is built around repetition. Wake, warm the fire, eat, work, carry, repair, gather, return, sleep, then begin again. There is comfort in the routine. The tasks may be tiring, but they are familiar. You know what needs to be done, and everyone around you knows as well. The cold remains constant, but the village continues. Smoke rises from every cottage. The fields wait beyond the houses. The animals make their quiet sounds, and somewhere behind you, your own cottage stands with a small fire burning inside. You continue walking toward the next task of the morning. The day is still young. There will be many hours before sunset, and when darkness returns, the fire will matter once again. The village is fully awake now. The quiet of early morning has disappeared, replaced by the steady sounds of work. You can hear footsteps on frozen ground. A wooden bucket scrapes against a doorway. Animals move inside their shelters. Someone calls to another person across the narrow path. Nothing is loud for long. The village is simply busy. You stand outside your cottage and look toward the fields. They stretch away beneath a pale winter sky. The ground is hard. In some places, frost covers the surface like a thin layer of white dust. There is very little green. The landscape looks quiet, but it is not empty. Winter has its own work, and much of that work begins close to home. You first need to collect water. The household cannot live without it. There is no tap inside the cottage. No pipe carries clean water directly to the hearth. Instead, someone has to fetch it. You take a wooden bucket and begin walking. It is heavier than it looks, even before it is filled. You follow the path toward the nearest source. Perhaps it is a well, perhaps a stream. The exact distance depends on where the village has been built, but the principle remains the same. Water must be carried. You reach the well and look down. The surface is dark. You lower the bucket carefully. The rope slides through your hands. You hear the quiet splash below. Then you begin pulling. The weight increases quickly. Your shoulders tighten. The rope is rough against your palms. Slowly, the bucket rises. You lift it over the edge. Water moves inside it as you turn away from the well. The journey back is slower. Every step has to be careful. The ground is uneven and slippery with frost. You hold the bucket with both hands. A little water spills over the side. You continue. When you finally reach the cottage, you place the bucket near the hearth. The water is cold. It will need to be warmed before it is useful for many household tasks. You sit for a moment. The morning has already required effort, and it is still early. This is one of the differences between your life here and the life you are accustomed to. Simple things require time. Water requires a journey. Warmth requires fuel. Food requires preparation. Clothing requires maintenance. A meal cannot be produced by pressing a button. Almost everything begins with someone's physical effort. You stand again. The household has more work to do. A small amount of food is being prepared near the fire. You watch as grain is measured carefully. Nothing is wasted. The supply must last. Winter changes the meaning of abundance. A full container is reassuring. An empty one is frightening. Even ordinary grain must be treated carefully. You look around the cottage. There are no large piles of food. What has been stored is valuable. Some supplies are kept in containers. Others are preserved in ways that allow them to survive through the colder months. The household does not know exactly what the coming weeks will bring. A mild winter is easier. A long and severe winter is different. The more the cold continues, the more important every stored resource becomes. You move outside again. The sun is higher now. It provides light, but very little warmth. The air remains sharp. You walk toward the animal shelter. The animals are part of the household's survival. They provide food, materials, labor, or some combination of these things. They also require care. You check their bedding. You make sure they have enough feed. You remove what needs to be cleared away. The work is ordinary, but ordinary work is what keeps the household functioning. There is no single dramatic moment that makes life here difficult. Instead, difficulty is spread across hundreds of small tasks. Carry this, repair that, gather more wood, fetch water, feed the animals, prepare food, patch clothing, clean the living space, keep the fire burning, then do it again tomorrow. You return toward the cottage. The smoke from the chimney rises almost straight upward. The wind has eased. For a short while, the village feels almost peaceful. You pause and look at the houses around you. They are similar in many ways, small, practical, built from local materials. Each one holds a household trying to get through the same season. You wonder how different the inside of each home might feel. Perhaps some families have more food. Perhaps some have more fuel. Perhaps some have a better roof. Others may have fewer resources. Winter does not affect every household equally, but the cold reaches everyone. You return inside. The fire is still burning. You place another small piece of wood onto it. The flame grows. The room warms slightly. You sit near the hearth while the morning meal is prepared. Outside, the village continues its work. Inside, the cottage remains the center of your day. You begin to understand why the smallest comforts matter so much. A warm bowl, a dry blanket, a steady fire, a roof that does not leak, a door that closes properly. These things might seem ordinary. Here, they are valuable. The morning passes slowly. The fire crackles. The smoke rises. The light moves across the walls. And beyond the doorway, winter remains. You know that the afternoon will bring more work. There will be wood to carry. There will be food to prepare. There will be animals to check again. And eventually the sun will begin to disappear. When that happens, the cold will return more strongly. For now, though, you remain beside the hearth. The cottage is warmer than it was at dawn. The water has been brought. The animals have been cared for. The first meal is finished. Another part of the day has passed. You listen to the quiet sounds around you. The fire, the movement of people, the distant village, and beneath everything, the silence of winter. The afternoon has begun, and the winter light is already changing. The sun is still above the horizon, but it no longer feels strong. You can see the pale light spreading across the village, touching the roofs and frozen paths. But the air remains cold. There is still work to do before darkness arrives. You step outside the cottage again. The ground makes a quiet crunch beneath your feet. Frost has hardened the surface. and every step feels deliberate. The fields beyond the village are mostly quiet. There is little growing now. Winter has reduced the landscape to earth, stubble, hedges, bare branches, and patches of frost. You look toward the trees at the edge of the settlement. That is where another part of the day's work begins. Wood. The morning supply was useful, but it will not be enough for the evening and night. You take a simple tool and begin walking. The path is narrow. Branches scrape against your clothing as you move between the trees. The air beneath them feels colder. There is less sunlight here. You find fallen branches first. They are easier to collect than standing timber, and dry pieces are especially valuable. You test one with your hands. It is light, dry, useful. You break smaller pieces and gather them into a bundle. Then you search for larger branches. Each one takes more effort. The work is quiet. There is no machine making the task easier. Only your hands, your tools, and the strength you can use. You begin to understand how closely medieval life is tied to physical energy. Every task consumes it. Walking consumes it. Carrying wood consumes it. Fetching water consumes it. Even staying warm consumes energy. And the food you eat must replace at least some of what the body spends. That is why winter can be difficult. The cold does not simply make you uncomfortable. It increases the importance of everything you already need. More fuel, more clothing, more food, more shelter. You gather another branch and carry it toward the path. Your arms are beginning to feel heavy. You stop for a moment. The forest is quiet. You can hear the wind moving through the bare branches above you. Somewhere farther away, a bird calls. Then the sound disappears. You continue. By the time you return to the village, the afternoon light has become softer. You carry the wood into the cottage and place it beside the hearth. The pile is beginning to look reassuring again, but you know it will become smaller tonight. That is the cycle. Gather, burn, gather again. You sit beside it briefly. The heat feels different now. You have been outside in the cold, so even a small fire seems powerful. You hold your hands toward the flames. Your fingers warm slowly. You look around the room. The cottage feels almost peaceful. The household is quieter in the afternoon. Some people are preparing food. Someone is repairing a piece of clothing. Another person is working with a tool. The sounds are soft. Wood against wood. Thread moving through cloth. The crackle of the fire. Outside, the wind. You begin to notice how much of life here is spent maintaining things. Nothing remains useful forever without attention. Clothing tears. Tools break. Wood becomes damp. Roofs need repair. Containers crack. Shoes wear down. Everything must be looked after. A modern person might replace a damaged object. Here, replacement is not always possible. Repair is often the better choice. You watch someone mend a worn piece of clothing. The stitches are careful. The fabric has already been repaired before. You can see older lines where previous damage was fixed. The garment is not beautiful, but it is valuable. It keeps the cold away. That is enough. You look at your own clothing. It too carries evidence of use. The fabric has softened with time. Some areas are thinner than others. The edges show wear, but it remains functional, and that matters more than appearance. Outside, the sun continues to descend. The light coming through the small opening in the wall becomes warmer for a while, then begins to fade. The afternoon is ending. You realize how quickly the day has passed. There is still enough light to complete a few tasks. The animals need to be checked again. Water must be available. The fire needs another piece of wood. Food must be prepared before darkness. Everyone moves with quiet purpose. There is no need to discuss every task. They are part of the daily rhythm. You step outside once more. The cold is stronger now. The temperature seems to fall as the sun disappears. You can see smoke rising from every cottage. The village looks different at this hour. During the day, people move between houses and fields. Now they begin returning indoors. Doors close. Animals are brought closer to shelter. The paths become quieter. You carry one final container inside, then you close the door. The change is immediate. The wind disappears. The cottage is not warm yet, but it is protected. You hear the fire. You hear the quiet movements of the household. The outside world becomes distant. For a moment, you understand why the cottage matters so much. It cannot defeat winter. It cannot make the cold disappear, but it creates a boundary. Outside is the winter landscape. Inside is the small world you are trying to keep alive. You kneel beside the hearth, and add another piece of wood. The flame rises. Orange light spreads across the room. The day is ending. Soon there will be food. Then darkness. Then another long winter night. You sit quietly beside the fire. Your hands are warm again. The cold remains outside, and for a little while, that is enough. The sun is disappearing now. You can feel the change before you see it. The light outside the cottage has become pale and gray, and the shadows across the village are growing longer. Inside, the household is preparing for the evening. This is the part of winter's day when everything begins to happen at once. The animals must be checked, the food must be prepared, the fire must be strengthened, the door must be closed before the cold becomes worse. There is no hurry in the modern sense. There is simply a familiar rhythm. One task follows another. You begin by checking the fire. The wood you gathered earlier is stacked beside the hearth. You choose a dry piece and place it carefully among the burning logs. The flames rise. For a few moments, the room becomes brighter. The orange light reaches the walls and catches the edges of the wooden beams. Shadows move across the cottage. The same small room that seemed dark and cold in the morning now feels almost comfortable. But you know better than to waste the warmth. The evening fire has to last. You add only what is necessary. Too little fuel, and the cottage will become cold before morning. Too much, and precious wood will disappear too quickly. The balance is always in your mind. You move toward the food. The evening meal is simple. There is no great feast waiting after a day of work. The household eats what has been stored, preserved, or gathered. A pot is placed near the fire. The contents warm slowly. The smell fills the cottage. It is a familiar smell. Grain, vegetables, perhaps a little preserved meat, or another small addition, depending on what remains. The meal is not designed to impress. It is designed to provide enough strength for tomorrow. You sit close to the hearth while the food cooks. The warmth reaches your face. Your hands are no longer cold. For the first time since morning, you are not thinking about the next task. You simply sit. Around you, the household becomes quieter. The day's work has been completed. People are tired. The light outside is almost gone. You can hear the wind beginning to move against the walls. It is a soft sound at first, then stronger. The cottage creaks. The roof answers with small sounds as the wind presses against it. You look toward the doorway. It is closed. That matters. A closed door keeps out more than the weather. It keeps in the warmth you have worked all day to create. You notice how different the cottage feels now. In the morning, you were aware of every cold surface, the floor, the walls, the air. Now the fire has changed the room. Not completely. There are still cold places. The corners remain dark. The walls are still cool. But near the hearth, life feels easier. This small circle of warmth is where everyone naturally gathers. Someone prepares tomorrow's supplies. A child sits quietly near the fire. An older member of the household rests nearby. There is little conversation. The sound of the fire is enough. You look at the wooden bowls from the meal. They are simple. The utensils are simple. Even the table is simple. Yet after a long winter day, these ordinary things feel reassuring. The meal is finished. The pot is moved away from the hottest part of the fire. There is no reason to waste fuel. The remaining warmth can be used for other things. Perhaps water is warmed. Perhaps a damp garment is placed near the hearth. Perhaps tools are cleaned and stored. Nothing is wasted. You begin to understand how closely the household is connected to the fire. Without it, many evening tasks would become difficult. There would be little light. There would be no warm food. Wet clothing would remain damp, and the cold would quickly fill the cottage. The fire is not merely burning in the corner. It is at the center of the evening. Outside, darkness has completely arrived. You cannot see the fields anymore. The village has become a collection of small points of firelight. Through gaps around the doorway, you can sometimes see a faint glow from another cottage. Smoke rises into the dark sky. The wind moves across the roofs. The winter night has begun. You sit closer to the hearth. The warmth is steady now. You stretch your hands toward it. The day has left your body tired. Your shoulders ache slightly. Your hands are rough from carrying wood and working with tools. Your feet are tired from walking across frozen ground, but there is comfort in knowing that the work is finished. For tonight at least. Tomorrow will bring more. More water, more wood, more food preparation, more work. But tonight you are inside. The door is closed, the fire is burning, the meal is finished. The household is together. You listen to the wind outside. It sounds distant now. The walls do not make the cottage warm by themselves, but they keep the worst of the weather away. You begin to understand why a simple cottage could mean so much. It is not large. It is not beautiful in the way a wealthy house might be. It does not contain expensive furniture, but it protects the people inside. And in winter, protection is valuable. You look toward the hearth again. The flames have settled. The fire is no longer roaring. It burns quietly, slowly, carefully, exactly as it needs to. The room is warm enough. The evening is quiet. And for the first time all day, there is nowhere else you need to go. You remain beside the fire. Outside, the winter night grows darker. Inside, the cottage holds its small circle of warmth. And for a while, you simply listen to the fire. The cottage has grown quiet. The evening meal is finished, the bowls have been cleared, and the fire is burning steadily in the hearth. Outside, darkness has settled completely over the village. There is no longer any pale winter light coming through the small opening in the wall. Only darkness. You sit close to the fire and listen. The wind moves around the cottage. It brushes against the roof. It finds the smallest gaps in the walls. Every so often, the timber makes a quiet sound as the building responds to the cold. Inside, the air is warmer than it was earlier, but you can still feel the difference between the center of the room and its edges. Near the hearth, the warmth is comfortable. Near the walls, the cold remains. You understand why everyone stays close to the fire. There is nowhere else to go for warmth. You look toward the sleeping area. The beds are being prepared again. The straw is moved and flattened. Blankets are shaken out. Clothing is folded, where it can be reached easily in the morning. The household is preparing for another night. There is no separate bedroom to retreat into. Everyone remains within the same small space. The fire provides the only real source of heat. The darkness outside makes the cottage feel even smaller. You can hear the wind more clearly now. It has grown stronger. A faint draft passes near the doorway. You pull your clothing closer. The cold has returned to your hands. You place them near the fire again. This is one of the strange things about winter here. You can become warm and cold several times in the same evening. Move closer to the hearth, and warmth returns. Move away, and the cold finds you again. Open the door, and the winter air enters immediately. Close it, and the cottage slowly recovers. There is no switch that changes the temperature. There is only the fire. And the fire needs attention. You watch the flames. They have become smaller. Someone adds another piece of wood. The flames rise. For a moment, the room brightens. The wooden beams above you become visible. The faces of the people nearby are touched by orange light. Then, the flames settle again. You begin to understand how carefully the fire must be managed. It cannot simply be left burning without thought. Fuel is limited. Every piece has a cost. You remember carrying the wood earlier, the weight in your arms, the cold against your fingers, the distance between the trees and the cottage. That wood is now becoming heat. You can almost follow the journey. Tree, branch, bundle, cottage, hearth, warmth. Nothing has been wasted. You sit quietly and listen to the crackling. Someone nearby begins repairing a piece of clothing. The work is done close to the fire, because there is still enough light to see. The needle moves slowly through the fabric. A tear is closed. The garment will be useful again tomorrow. This is another part of surviving winter. You cannot afford to let small problems become large ones. A loose seam becomes a draft. A hole becomes a colder night. A broken tool becomes a harder day. Everything is repaired before it becomes useless. The cottage is quiet enough now that you can hear small sounds. The fire, the wind, the movement of straw, a cough, the soft footsteps of someone crossing the floor. Outside, an animal moves inside its shelter. Then silence returns. You look toward the door. It is firmly closed. That simple wooden door feels important tonight. Beyond it is the cold, the fields, the trees, the frozen paths, the dark village. Inside is the fire, the blankets, the household, the small amount of food stored for tomorrow. The cottage cannot stop winter, but it gives you somewhere to wait for it. You begin to feel tired. The day's work is still in your body. Your shoulders ache from carrying wood. Your hands feel rough. Your feet are tired from walking. The cold has taken energy from you even while you worked. Now, with the fire beside you, the tiredness becomes easier to notice. You stretch your legs toward the warmth. The heat reaches your feet slowly. You close your eyes for a moment. The fire continues to burn. You can hear someone preparing the final things for the night. The household is almost ready to sleep. Before you lie down, you look around the cottage once more. The room is simple. The walls are rough. The roof is low. The furniture is limited. The possessions are few. But the room is familiar. Everything has its place. Everything is connected to the life being lived here. The fire, the straw, the blankets, the food, the tools, the clothing, the people. It is not a comfortable home by modern standards, but comfort is relative. After a day outside in winter, this small room feels precious. You move toward your bed. The straw waits beneath the blanket. You sit down carefully. The straw shifts beneath your weight. It is firm, uneven, but dry. You pull the blanket over yourself. The fire is still burning nearby. You can feel some warmth reaching your face. You listen to the wind again. It sounds stronger now, but it is outside. You are inside. That distinction matters. You close your eyes. For a moment, you think about tomorrow. The same tasks will return. The fire will need to be started. Water will need to be carried. Food will need to be prepared. Wood will need to be gathered. The animals will need care. The cold will still be there. But tomorrow has not arrived yet. Tonight you can rest. The fire crackles softly. The cottage settles into silence. The last voices disappear. One by one, everyone falls asleep. You remain awake for a little longer. You feel the straw beneath you. You hear the wind beyond the walls. And eventually, sleep arrives. The cottage is quiet now. Most of the household is asleep. The fire has settled into a low, steady glow, and the room is darker than it was earlier. You lie beneath the heavy blanket and listen to the sounds around you. The wind moves outside. The roof creaks occasionally. Someone shifts in their sleep. Then everything becomes quiet again. You are warm enough for the moment, but the night is only beginning. Winter nights are long. There are many hours between sunset and sunrise, and during those hours, the temperature outside will continue to fall. Inside the cottage, the fire becomes increasingly important. You turn slightly on the straw. The bedding makes a soft rustling sound. It is not an uncomfortable bed, exactly, but it is not soft. The straw has formed an uneven surface beneath you. Some places are thicker, others are flatter. You adjust your position and pull the blanket closer. The air near your face is cold. You breathe slowly. The warmth beneath the blanket remains trapped around your body. That warmth is valuable. You do not want to lose it. Across the cottage, the fire gives off another small burst of light. For a moment, you can see the room, the beams above you, the sleeping figures, the wooden containers, the doorway. Then the fire settles again. The darkness returns. You close your eyes. The wind becomes the main sound. It moves across the roof and along the walls. You can hear it more clearly because everything else is quiet. Sometimes a stronger gust makes the door tremble slightly. You remain still. The door is closed. The walls are holding. The fire is burning. For now, everything is as it should be. You think about the warmth of the fire. It is strange to realize how much of your comfort depends on something so small. A few pieces of wood, a handful of embers, a flame. Without them, the cottage would slowly become as cold as the world outside. Someone has to wake during the night if the fire becomes too weak. This is not something you can ignore. A fire left unattended may eventually disappear. That means the morning would begin with an even colder room. So the household has to think ahead. Enough fuel must remain within reach. The hearth must be arranged carefully. The embers must be protected. The fire has to survive until dawn. You listen again. A piece of wood shifts in the hearth. A few sparks rise. Then they vanish. The glow becomes smaller. You wonder whether someone will wake to add another piece. For now, nobody moves. The cottage remains still. You pull the blanket over your shoulders. Your feet are beginning to feel cold. You move them closer together. There is no separate source of heat waiting at the foot of the bed. The fire is too far away. The blanket is the only protection. You understand why sleeping arrangements matter in winter. People sleep close together, families share warmth, blankets are valuable. Straw provides insulation from the cold ground. Every small advantage helps. You settle back into the bedding. Outside, the wind continues. The night seems endless, but eventually you begin to drift. Your thoughts become slower. The sound of the fire becomes softer. You almost fall asleep. Then, the cottage grows colder. You wake slightly. The fire has weakened. The orange glow is barely visible. Someone else notices it too. A figure rises quietly. You hear the soft movement of feet across the floor. A piece of wood is lifted from the small pile beside the hearth. It is placed onto the embers. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the wood begins to catch. A faint flame appears. It grows slowly. The cottage brightens. The person remains beside the hearth until the fire is burning properly. Then they return to their bedding. The room becomes quiet again. You watch the fire for a few moments. It is stronger now. Warmth begins to return. You close your eyes. This small event tells you something about life here. Even sleep cannot completely separate you from the work of survival. The household must remain aware. Fire, food, water, animals, weather, everything requires attention. There is no moment when all of these concerns disappear. But there is also something peaceful about the routine. The fire has been restored. The household is safe. The night continues. You begin to relax again. The blanket feels warmer now. The straw beneath you is still firm, but your body has adjusted to it. The smoke has settled into the air. You can smell the faint remains of the evening fire. The cottage has its own scent. Wood, ash, straw, wool, smoke, food. These smells are part of the home. You listen to the wind one more time. It sounds distant now. The walls are between you and the winter. They are not perfect. They cannot stop every draft. They cannot make the room warm, but they provide shelter. And shelter is enough. You turn onto your side. The fire continues to glow. The household remains asleep. Outside, the fields are frozen beneath the night sky. The trees stand dark against the horizon. The village is silent. And somewhere beyond it, the winter landscape continues for miles. But inside the cottage, there is a small circle of warmth. A fire, a blanket, a bed of straw, a sleeping household. You breathe slowly. The cold is still there, but it no longer demands your attention. The fire is burning. The door is closed. The night is passing. And eventually, without realizing exactly when it happens, you fall asleep again. For a little longer, you remain between waking and sleep, listening to the quiet rhythm of the cottage around you. The fire burns softly. The wind passes beyond the walls, and the warmth, however small, remains. Morning arrives slowly. You do not wake because of sunlight. There is very little sunlight yet. Instead, you wake because the cottage has begun to move around you. Someone is already awake. You hear the quiet sound of wood being placed onto the hearth. A small flame catches. Another person moves across the floor. The day is beginning again. You remain beneath the blanket for a moment. The straw beneath you feels familiar now. It is firm and uneven, but your body has adjusted to it. The cold is still present. You can feel it against your face. But the worst of the night has passed. You sit up slowly. The fire is burning more strongly than it was during the night. Warm light spreads across the room. You hold your hands toward it. The first warmth of the morning feels almost like a reward. Outside, the sky is beginning to change. Through the small opening in the wall, you can see a faint gray-blue light. Dawn is coming. You stand and begin preparing yourself for the day. Your clothing is cold. It has been resting in the same cottage air all night. You pick up the layers and put them on carefully. The fabric is rough against your skin. There is no quick way to become warm. You rely on layers. A simple garment beneath another. Something heavier over the top. Perhaps a cloak or outer covering when you leave the cottage. Every layer matters. The colder the day, the more valuable good clothing becomes. You pull the clothing close around your body. Then you return to the hearth. A small amount of water is warming near the fire. You wait. The cottage is beginning to smell of smoke again. Someone prepares a simple morning meal. The same basic ingredients appear. Grain, perhaps vegetables, whatever has been stored. There is no reason to expect something different simply because a new day has arrived. The meal is eaten while the cottage is still dim. You hold the bowl close to your hands. Again, the warmth matters almost as much as the food. You eat slowly. Outside, the village is waking. You hear doors opening, footsteps crossing the frozen ground, animals beginning to stir. The sounds are familiar now. You are becoming part of the rhythm. After the meal, the household begins its morning work. There is no single task that defines the day. Instead, there are many small tasks. The fire needs fuel. Water needs to be stored. Animals need to be fed. Tools need to be checked. Clothing may need repair. Food needs to be prepared. The work continues because the household depends on it. You step outside. The morning air is cold, but the light is clearer now. Frost covers the ground. Your breath appears in front of you. You pull your outer clothing closer. The village looks different at dawn. Smoke rises from several roofs. The narrow paths are beginning to fill with people. Some carry buckets. Others carry tools. Someone leads an animal toward a shelter. The village is waking in the same way your cottage is waking. Slowly, quietly, without ceremony. You walk toward the edge of the settlement. The fields are waiting. There will not be much work on the frozen ground, but winter does not mean complete inactivity. There are fences to inspect, tools to repair, stored crops to check, animals to care for, wood to gather, and there is always something that can be prepared for the coming seasons. The work is less about producing a harvest today and more about making sure the household is ready when spring returns. You pause beside a fence. The wood is weathered. One section has become loose. You examine it carefully. It will need repair. You make a note of it and continue. The day has already begun to feel longer. Your body is awake now. The cold remains, but you are moving. Movement helps. You understand something else about surviving winter. You cannot remain beside the fire all day. The fire provides warmth, but work provides the things that keep the fire burning. Someone must gather the wood. Someone must prepare the food. Someone must care for the animals. Someone must maintain the house. The warmth inside the cottage depends on work done outside it. That connection is everywhere. You return toward the cottage, carrying a small bundle of branches. The sun is higher now. The light is brighter. Still, the air remains cold. You open the door and step inside. The warmth from the hearth touches your face. It is not dramatic. It is simply comforting. You place the branches beside the fire. They will be useful later. Then you sit for a moment. The morning has passed. Another winter day is underway. You look around the cottage. The same walls, the same hearth, the same simple belongings, but now you understand them differently. You understand why the fire matters, why the wood matters, why the blankets matter, why the food matters, why even a well-repaired door can be important. Nothing here is separate from survival. Every object contributes something, every task supports another, and every day repeats the same basic pattern. Wake, warm the fire, eat, work, gather, repair, return, rest, then begin again. You listen to the fire. Outside, winter continues. Inside, the household continues with it. The day is still young. There will be more work before sunset. But for now, you sit beside the hearth and let the warmth settle into your hands. The morning has begun. You know the same cold will return tonight. But for now, the fire is alive, the cottage is awake, and there is enough daylight ahead to finish another day's work. You rise from the hearth and prepare to begin again. The morning has settled into a steady rhythm. The village is fully awake now, and the quiet sounds of dawn have become the familiar sounds of work. You stand outside the cottage and look across the settlement. Smoke rises from several roofs. The paths are no longer empty. People move between houses carrying tools, buckets, bundles of wood, and food. The winter sky is pale above them. There is little warmth in the sunlight, but the light itself is valuable. It gives everyone more time to work. You begin walking toward the fields. The ground is still hard beneath your feet. Frost remains in shaded places where the sun has not reached. Your clothing keeps most of the cold away, but the wind finds your hands and face. You pull your sleeves closer. Ahead, a fence separates the village from the fields. You stop beside it. One of the posts is leaning. It has been damaged by weather, perhaps by wind or rain. It will need attention. You examine the wood. The task is not urgent enough to stop everything else, but it cannot be ignored forever. A weak fence can become a broken fence. A broken fence can allow animals to wander. A wandering animal can damage stored crops or gardens. One small problem can become several larger ones. So you make the repair. The work is slow. You use a simple tool and your hands. The wood is cold. Your fingers become stiff. You pause occasionally and warm them against your clothing. There is no reason to hurry. Winter rewards patience. You continue until the post is secure. Then you move on. Nearby, another task is waiting. A storage area needs to be checked. Winter supplies cannot simply be forgotten after they have been stored. They must be protected from dampness, animals, and spoilage. You inspect the containers. The grain is still dry. That is good. You check another supply, then another. Everything appears to be in order. You close the storage area again. There is a small sense of relief. A household survives winter partly by knowing what it has. How much grain, how much fuel, how much preserved food, how many usable tools, how many blankets, how much can be repaired, how much can be replaced. These questions are always somewhere in the background. You continue through the village. A person nearby is splitting wood. The sound carries clearly through the cold air. A heavy tool rises, then falls. Wood separates. The process repeats. You watch for a moment. It is familiar work, the kind of work that fills ordinary days. There is no dramatic story attached to it, but without it, the household would be colder tonight. That is the nature of this life. Important things are often ordinary things. A repaired fence, a dry storehouse, a stack of firewood, a working tool, a warm meal, a roof that does not leak. Each one seems small by itself. Together they make survival possible. You return toward your cottage. You pass children moving near the houses. They are not dressed for comfort in the modern sense. Their clothing is practical. They stay close to the buildings. Even children learn early that winter is something to respect. You reach your cottage and step inside. The fire is still burning. The room feels warmer than the outside world. You place your hands near the hearth. Again, you notice how quickly the body responds to warmth. The fingers begin to loosen. The face feels less cold. Your shoulders relax. You sit for a while. There is still work waiting, but the cottage offers a brief pause. You look at the walls. In daylight, you can see the details more clearly. The texture of the plaster, the rough timber, the places where repairs have been made, the small marks left by years of use. This is not a temporary shelter. It has been maintained because people expect to live here. Perhaps the same walls have sheltered several generations. Perhaps the roof has been repaired many times. Perhaps parts of the cottage have been rebuilt. A home like this changes slowly. It is shaped by weather, work, and necessity. You hear someone outside. The door opens. Cold air enters. A person carries another bundle of wood inside. The door closes again. The warmth begins to recover. This simple action happens repeatedly. Open. Cold enters. Close. Fire restores warmth. Open again later. Cold returns. It is a constant exchange. The cottage cannot completely separate itself from the outside world. It can only reduce its influence. You look toward the hearth. The wood burns steadily. You know that more will be needed later. The afternoon is still ahead. For now, you have time to complete another task. You gather a small tool and return outside. The work continues. There is nothing unusual about this day, and that is exactly the point. Most of life in a medieval peasant household is not made of dramatic events. It is made of repetition. The same paths, the same walls, the same tools, the same tasks, the same seasons returning year after year. Winter is simply one part of that cycle, a difficult part, a cold part, but a familiar one. You continue working beneath the pale winter sky. Your breath appears in the air. The village moves quietly around you. Smoke rises. Wood is split. Animals are fed. Food is prepared. Fences are repaired. Fire is maintained. And slowly, another morning passes. The sun begins to climb higher. The cold remains, but the village continues. You look back toward your cottage. A small column of smoke rises from the roof. Inside, the fire is waiting, and eventually, when the work is finished, you will return to that small circle of warmth once again. The afternoon arrives quietly. The morning work has continued for several hours, and now the winter sun hangs low enough to remind you that there is not much daylight left. You are back near the cottage, preparing for the next part of the day. The cold has not disappeared, it has simply become familiar. Your hands are rough from work. Your clothing carries traces of dust, smoke, and straw. Your body feels the weight of the morning. But there is still work to finish. Winter does not allow you to stop, simply because you are tired. You look toward the animal shelter. The animals need attention again. Their food has to be checked. Their bedding needs to remain reasonably dry. The shelter itself must be secure. A cold night is difficult for people, but it can also be difficult for animals. You enter quietly. The warmth is different here. There is no bright fire. Instead, the animals themselves provide some heat within the enclosed space. You check the feed. There is enough for now. You add what is needed and make sure nothing has been spilled. Then you inspect the doorway. It closes properly. That matters. A gap would allow cold air to move through the shelter all night. You make a small adjustment. Another simple task finished. You step outside again. The afternoon light has begun to soften. You can see the sun shining across the fields, but the warmth is weak. The shadows of the buildings stretch longer across the frozen ground. You return to the cottage. Inside, someone is preparing the evening meal. The smell of cooking fills the room. It is comforting. You place the day's remaining wood beside the hearth. There is enough for tonight, but you immediately think about tomorrow. Enough for tomorrow? Perhaps. Enough if the weather becomes colder? You are not certain. This is the constant calculation of winter. A household cannot simply think about today. Every resource must be considered against the days ahead. You look at the woodpile. It has become smaller again. The thought is not frightening yet, but it is impossible to ignore. You know that another trip to the trees will be necessary soon. Perhaps tomorrow. Perhaps the day after. It depends on how quickly the fire is used. It depends on the weather. It depends on how much cooking is required. Nothing is completely predictable. You sit beside the hearth. Someone has placed a piece of clothing near the warmth. The fabric is slightly damp. It slowly dries in the heat. The smell of wool and smoke fills the room. You watch the fabric. Again, you notice how the fire is used for everything. Heat, light, cooking, drying, warmth. One small source of energy supports many parts of daily life. You begin to understand why fuel is so important. Without enough wood, every other task becomes harder. Cooking takes longer. Water remains cold. Clothing stays damp. And the household must spend more energy simply staying comfortable enough to work. You glance toward the doorway. Outside, the wind has begun to rise. The sound is faint at first, then stronger. It moves along the walls. You can feel a small draft near the door. Someone notices it too. The door is checked. A cloth or piece of material is placed where the cold air is entering. The difference is small, but it helps. This is another ordinary repair. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would be remembered in a grand history book. But for the people living here, it matters. The cottage is constantly being adjusted. A roof is patched, a wall is repaired, a door is sealed, a blanket is mended, a tool is sharpened, a pot is fixed. The work never truly ends. You step outside one final time before evening. The village looks quieter now. People are returning home. The paths are less crowded. Smoke rises more thickly from the cottages as more fires are lit. The smell of wood smoke hangs in the cold air. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once. Then the village becomes quiet again. You stand still for a moment. The winter landscape looks almost peaceful. Bare trees, frozen fields, small houses, thin smoke, a pale sky. It is beautiful in its own way. But you know what the beauty hides: the cold, the work, the careful use of food and fuel, the uncertainty of the coming weeks. You turn back toward your cottage. The doorway is waiting. You open it. Warmth touches your face. The difference is immediate. Outside the wind, inside the fire. You close the door. The cottage becomes quiet again. You remove your outer clothing and sit near the hearth. Your body relaxes. The day's work is nearly finished. The evening meal will come soon. Then the fire will be managed for the night. Then sleep. The same rhythm. The same cottage. The same winter. You look at the flames. They are small but steady. You add one piece of wood. The fire grows. For a few moments, the room becomes brighter. You listen to the crackling. Tomorrow will bring more work. There will be more wood to gather, more water to carry, more food to prepare, more repairs. But tonight, the household has enough. Enough warmth, enough food, enough fuel, enough shelter. And sometimes, during a difficult winter, enough is a form of comfort all by itself. You remain beside the fire as the last daylight disappears. The cottage grows darker around you. Outside, winter settles over the village once again. Inside, the hearth continues to glow. You remain beside the hearth for another quiet moment, watching the last daylight fade across the wall. The room is becoming darker, but the fire is ready for the evening. Soon everyone will gather close to it again, and another winter night will begin. The last daylight has disappeared. The cottage is now lit almost entirely by the hearth. The room feels different after sunset. During the day, the walls seemed ordinary. Now the firelight moves across them, creating shadows that stretch and disappear whenever the flames change. You sit close to the warmth. Outside, the winter night has returned. The wind is stronger than it was earlier. You can hear it pressing against the cottage. The roof makes small sounds. The doorway remains firmly closed. Inside, the household is preparing for another evening. The same routine begins again. Wood is brought closer to the hearth. Water is checked. Food is prepared. Animals have already been settled for the night. The day's work is almost finished. We look toward the firewood. The pile is smaller than it was this morning. It is not empty, but you notice the difference. Every winter evening changes the size of the pile. One piece becomes warmth. Another becomes light. Another becomes cooked food. Another becomes hot water. The wood disappears slowly, but the work required to replace it remains. You sit beside the hearth and watch a log burn. The outer surface darkens. A small crack appears. The fire moves through the wood. You can hear the quiet snapping sound. Then a section collapses into the embers. You understand that the fire is always consuming something. It cannot provide warmth without fuel. This simple fact shapes the evening. You cannot burn everything. You must decide what is necessary. The household has to remain warm enough to sleep, but enough fuel must remain for the morning. Tomorrow's fire will need to be started. That means some wood must be saved. You look at the smaller branches. They are useful for beginning a fire. The larger pieces can maintain it. Each type has its place. Nothing is simply thrown into the flames. A little later, the evening meal is served. The food is warm. The bowls are simple. Everyone gathers close to the hearth. The conversation is quiet. There is little reason to speak loudly. The fire provides a steady background sound. You eat slowly. After the day's work, the warmth of the food feels comforting. You notice again how closely food and fire are connected. Without the hearth, the meal would not be possible in the same way. The fire turns grain and vegetables into something warm and nourishing. It also warms the water used around the cottage. It provides light while people work. It dries damp clothing. It helps keep the household comfortable. One source of heat supports many parts of life. After the meal, the bowls are cleared. Nothing useful is wasted. The remaining food is kept for another purpose or another meal. The pot is moved away from the strongest heat. The household settles into quieter tasks. Someone repairs clothing. Another person checks a tool. A small piece of fabric is folded and placed beside the sleeping area. You watch the work. Even now, at the end of the day, things are being maintained. The work does not stop simply because darkness has arrived. There are still things that can be done beside the fire. The light is limited, but it is enough for simple tasks. You think about how different the evening would be without the hearth. The cottage would be dark. The food would be cold. The clothing would remain damp. The people inside would have to remain closer together, simply to preserve warmth. The fire changes all of that. It creates a small center of life. Everyone naturally gathers around it. You move closer. The heat touches your face. You hold your hands toward the flames. The warmth is gentle. You close your eyes for a moment. Outside, the wind rises. The cottage creaks. A draft moves near the wall. You pull your clothing closer. The contrast is clear. Only a short distance separates warmth from cold. The wall is the boundary. Inside there is fire. Outside there is winter. You begin to understand why people cared so much about the condition of their homes. A damaged roof was not simply an inconvenience. A broken door was not simply annoying. A gap in the wall could make a night colder. A missing blanket could make sleep uncomfortable. Small defects could become serious when the weather was severe. That is why repairs were part of ordinary life. The cottage had to be watched, maintained, adjusted, protected. The same was true of everything inside it. The blanket, the clothing, the tools, the food containers, the firewood. Nothing could be completely ignored. You look around the room again. The firelight touches the faces of the household. Everyone appears tired. The day has been long, but there is also a quiet sense of security. The work is finished. The door is closed. The fire is burning. There is food in the household. There is a roof overhead. For tonight, those things are enough. You remain beside the hearth while the flames slowly settle. The larger logs have begun to glow red beneath the surface. The room is warm enough. You do not need to add more wood yet. That is important. The fire should not be allowed to become too weak, but it should not consume fuel unnecessarily either. You wait. The flames rise and fall. The shadows move across the walls. The cottage becomes quieter. One by one, the evening tasks are completed. The repaired clothing is put away. The tools are stored. The bowls are cleaned. The remaining wood is placed where it will stay dry. The household is preparing for sleep. You look toward the sleeping area. The straw bedding is waiting. The blankets are ready. Soon, you will leave the warmth of the hearth and return to the coldest part of the cottage, but not yet. And as the evening grows deeper, you realize that this simple fire is one of the most important things in your entire world. The fire has become the center of the cottage again. The evening is moving toward night, and the room is quieter than it was earlier. You sit beside the hearth and watch the flames. They rise and fall gently. Sometimes a piece of wood shifts. Sometimes a spark escapes and disappears. The fire has been burning for hours. It has warmed the cottage, cooked the food, dried clothing, and provided light. Now it has another task. It must help carry the household through the night. You look toward the sleeping area. The blankets are ready. The straw beds have been prepared. The people around you are beginning to settle down. But before sleep comes, there are still a few things to consider. Winter nights are long. The fire cannot simply be left burning without thought. Someone must decide how much wood to use. Someone must make sure enough remains for the morning. You look at the pile beside the hearth. There is still wood there. Not as much as yesterday. Not as much as it was at the beginning of winter. But enough for tonight. You pick up one of the larger pieces. It is dry. You place it carefully on the fire. The flames rise around it. The room becomes brighter. You hold your hands toward the heat. The warmth feels good. Your fingers relax. You think about how different this evening would be without the fire. The cottage would become dark. The food would be cold. The air would grow steadily colder. The blankets would become more important. Everyone would move closer together. The fire is therefore more than a source of warmth. It is the heart of the household. Without it, many ordinary activities would become difficult. You watch someone prepare a small amount of water. The container is placed close to the flames. Perhaps it will be used in the morning. Perhaps it is simply being warmed for comfort. Again, the fire is doing several things at once. This is how resources are used in the cottage. Nothing is completely separate. The same wood that warms you can cook your meal. The same fire that cooks the meal can heat water. The same heat can dry clothing. The same light can allow someone to repair a tool. One source supports many needs. You listen to the wind outside. It has become stronger. A gust passes over the roof. The cottage creaks softly. You look toward the door. It is closed tightly. That small piece of wood is important. It keeps the wind outside. It keeps the warmth inside. It creates a boundary between the household and the winter night. You remain beside the hearth. The fire burns steadily. Then you notice something. the warmth does not reach the entire room. The corners remain cold, the walls are cold, the floor is cold. Only the area around the hearth feels truly comfortable. This means that everyone naturally gathers here. The fire creates a social center as well as a physical one. People sit together, they eat together, they work together, they rest together. The darkness outside encourages the same thing. There is little reason to wander outside once the sun has disappeared. The cottage becomes the entire world for the night. You look around. The room is simple, but it is familiar. The same walls, the same beams, the same tools, the same blankets, the same hearth. You begin to understand how familiarity can become a form of comfort. You know where everything is. You know how the door sounds when it closes. You know how the roof sounds in the wind. You know which part of the floor creaks. You know how the fire behaves when a fresh piece of wood is added. These details are ordinary, but they make the cottage feel like home. You hear a quiet voice nearby. Someone says something softly. Another person answers. Then the conversation ends. There is no need for long discussion. Everyone is tired. The day's work has taken its energy. You feel it too. Your shoulders are heavy, your hands are tired, your feet ache slightly. The warmth makes the tiredness easier to notice. You stretch your legs toward the hearth. The firelight moves across the floor. The shadows become longer. You begin to feel sleepy. But you know that the night is not finished yet. The fire still needs to be watched. The household cannot afford to let it disappear completely. Someone may wake later. Someone may add another piece of wood. The night will continue in small cycles. Warmth, sleep, cold, fire, sleep again. You realize that even rest is connected to work. The fire must be maintained so that the household can rest. The wood must be gathered during the day so that the fire can burn at night. The food must be prepared so that the body has enough strength to work tomorrow. Everything connects. Nothing is completely effortless. You look at the flames one last time. The fire has settled again. The room is quiet. The wind is outside. The household is inside. For a moment, you feel almost completely comfortable. The cold still exists. You know it is waiting beyond the walls, but you are warm enough. And tonight, that is what matters. You rise slowly. The warmth fades as you move away from the hearth. You walk toward the sleeping area. The floor is cold beneath your feet. You climb onto the straw bed. The blanket is pulled over your body. You turn toward the fire. Its glow is still visible in the darkness. The flames move gently. The cottage is quiet. You close your eyes. Tomorrow the same work will begin again. The fire will need to be revived. Water will need to be carried. Food will need to be prepared. But tomorrow is still far away. And slowly, the warmth of the hearth becomes the last thing you feel before sleep. The night has settled deeply over the village. The cottage is quiet now. The fire burns low, and the people around you have begun to sleep. You remain awake for a little while, listening to the sounds of winter beyond the walls. The wind moves across the roof. A branch touches the side of the cottage. Somewhere outside, an animal shifts in its shelter. Then, silence returns. You lie beneath the blanket and think about the day that has passed. It began in darkness. You woke cold. You brought the fire back to life. You carried water. You gathered wood. You worked outside. You returned to the warmth of the cottage. And now the same room that welcomed you in the morning is preparing to carry you through another night. The cottage seems smaller after dark. Without sunlight, you cannot see the fields. You cannot see the village paths. You cannot see the trees beyond the houses. The outside world has almost disappeared. There is only the room, the fire, the blankets, the sleeping household, and the sounds of the winter night. You turn slightly on the straw. It shifts beneath your body. The bedding is not soft, but it is familiar. You have already learned where the straw is thickest. You know how to position yourself so that your body rests comfortably enough. Small habits like this matter. Comfort is not something the cottage provides automatically. It is something you learn to create. You pull the blanket closer. The wool is rough against your skin. It has a smell of smoke from the hearth. Everything in the cottage seems to carry that smell. The walls, the clothing, the blankets, the wooden beams, even your hair. The fire has been burning for so long that smoke has become part of the atmosphere. You barely notice it now. You close your eyes. The fire crackles softly. A log shifts. You hear a quiet sound from the hearth. Then another. The flames rise for a moment. Warm light reaches the ceiling. Then the fire settles again. You think about the morning. The fire had been almost gone. Someone had to wake and restore it. That memory reminds you how dependent the household is on small things. The fire, the wood, the door, the roof, the blankets, the food. None of them seem extraordinary, but together they create the conditions necessary for life. You begin to think about the cottage itself. It is not simply a place where you sleep. It protects the food, it stores the tools, it shelters the animals nearby, it provides a place to cook, it gives people somewhere to gather, it keeps the wind away, it gives the household a place to return to after working outside. During the day, you barely notice these things. Now, in the darkness, their importance becomes clearer. The walls are between you and the winter. The roof is above you. The door is closed. The fire is burning. You are inside. That is enough. The cottage makes a low creaking sound. You open your eyes. For a moment, you listen carefully. Nothing else happens. The roof holds. The door remains closed. The fire continues. You relax again. There is something comforting about knowing the sounds of the house. You recognize the difference between an ordinary creak and something that needs attention. You know how the wind sounds when it moves across the roof. You know how the fire sounds when a log is beginning to collapse. You know the quiet movements of the people sleeping nearby. These sounds become part of home. You turn onto your side. The cold air touches your face. You pull the blanket higher. Your body is warm beneath it. That warmth has been created slowly. The fire helped. The blanket helped. The straw beneath you helped. So did the walls. Nothing provided complete protection. Together they provide enough. You begin to understand something about surviving a winter like this. It is rarely one great invention or one perfect shelter that keeps you alive. It is a collection of small protections: a dry roof, a thick blanket, a warm fire, a full bowl, a repaired shoe, a sealed door, a stored pile of wood. Each one removes a little discomfort. Together they make the difference between simply enduring winter and living through it. The thought makes you feel strangely calm. The cottage is modest. The winter is harsh. The work is tiring. But the household knows what it is doing. It has done this before. The routines are familiar. The tasks are known. The season is expected. Winter is difficult, but it is not mysterious. The people here understand it. They know when to gather wood. They know how to store food. They know how to protect the fire. They know how to repair their clothing. They know when to close the door. They know how to sleep through the cold. You listen again. The fire is quieter now. The room is almost completely dark. The last glow from the hearth reaches only a small area of the floor. You close your eyes. The wind continues outside. The cottage remains still. Your breathing becomes slower. The events of the day begin to fade. There's no need to think about tomorrow yet. Tomorrow will come when the light returns. For now, the fire is burning. The household is sleeping. The door is closed. The walls are standing. You are warm enough. And slowly, the winter night carries you towards sleep. For a little longer, you simply listen. The fire breathes softly in the hearth. The wind passes beyond the walls. The cottage holds its warmth around you. Nothing needs to happen now. The work of the day is finished. The night has grown deeper. The fire is quieter now, and the cottage has settled into a stillness that comes when everyone has been asleep for some time. You lie beneath the blanket and listen. The wind is still moving outside. It travels across the frozen fields and between the cottages, finding every open space. Inside, the air is calm. The fire gives off a faint red glow. You can feel a little warmth beneath the blanket. For a while, you remain still. Then you notice the cold. It has returned to your feet. You move them closer together. The straw beneath you is cool. The blanket is warm only where your body has already heated it. You pull it higher. This is another part of winter that becomes familiar. Warmth does not remain automatically. You have to keep it close. You turn toward the hearth. The embers are still alive. A small orange light moves beneath the ash. You watch it carefully. The fire has not gone out. That is enough. You close your eyes again. But sleep does not come immediately. You begin thinking about the winter itself. How long has the cold been here? How much longer will it last? The answer is not known. Winter is a season rather than a single event. One cold morning can be endured easily. Weeks of cold require planning. A household needs enough food, enough fuel, enough clothing, enough shelter, and enough strength. The longer the winter continues, the more important these things become. You think about the woodpile. It is smaller now. You remember how it looked earlier in the season. Large, neat, reassuring. Now there is less of it. Each evening has reduced it. Each meal has consumed some. Each morning fire has consumed more. The wood is slowly becoming warmth and disappearing. That thought makes you understand why winter preparation begins long before the coldest days arrive. You cannot wait till the first freezing night to start gathering fuel. By then, the work would already be too difficult. The same is true of food. The household cannot wait until the fields are frozen before thinking about what it will eat. Supplies must be stored, food must be preserved, containers must be protected. Everything has to be ready before winter becomes severe. You listen to the wind again. It is stronger now. The cottage gives a soft creak. You open your eyes. The darkness is almost complete. Only the faintest glow remains around the hearth. You wonder whether the fire will last until morning. Someone may wake later to check it. Perhaps another piece of wood will be added. The thought is reassuring. The household has done this before. The winter night is not unfamiliar. It is simply another night that has to be managed. You pull the blanket around your shoulders. The wool feels rough against your skin, but it is thick. It holds warmth. You think about how valuable such a blanket would be. A blanket is not simply something decorative. It protects the body from the cold. It allows sleep. It helps conserve the warmth created during the day. A damaged blanket would be a real problem. So would a torn cloak. So would worn shoes. Every item of clothing has a practical purpose. You begin to understand how little can be wasted. Even a small piece of cloth might be saved. A torn garment can become part of another repair. A worn blanket can be patched. Nothing needs to look new. It only needs to work. You settle deeper into the straw. Your body is beginning to relax. The cold is still present, but the blanket and the walls are holding enough warmth around you. The fire remains alive. You can hear someone breathing nearby. The cottage is still. Outside, winter continues without interruption. The fields remain frozen. The trees stand bare. The paths are empty. The village sleeps. But inside this small room, life continues quietly. The fire, the blankets, the stored food, the walls, the sleeping bodies, all of them are part of the same system. Nothing is perfect, but everything helps. You think about how different survival must have felt when there was no modern way to escape the weather. You could not turn on a heater. You could not order food. You could not drive somewhere warmer. If the roof leaked, it had to be repaired. If the firewood ran low, someone had to gather more. If food was scarce, there was no easy replacement. The household depended on preparation, and preparation depended on ordinary work. You remember the day again. The water, the wood, the animals, the repairs, the food. None of it seemed extraordinary while you were doing it. But now, lying awake in the cold, you understand that every task had been connected to this moment. The reason you can sleep now is because someone gathered wood earlier. The reason there is food tomorrow is because someone stored it months ago. The reason the wind stays mostly outside is because someone built and repaired these walls. The reason you have a blanket is because someone made and maintained it. Winter survival is built from thousands of small efforts. You close your eyes again. The fire gives one final soft crack. A small spark rises. Then darkness returns. You breathe slowly. The cottage remains quiet. The night is passing. And somewhere beyond the walls, winter waits patiently for morning. But for now, you have enough warmth, enough shelter, enough food, enough fire, and slowly you begin to sleep. You remain still for a few more moments. The cold is outside. The warmth is here. The difference is small, but tonight it is enough. The cottage holds you quietly, while the winter night passes beyond its walls. The night has passed, and the cottage is waking again. You open your eyes slowly. The first thing you notice is the fire. A faint orange glow remains beneath the ash. It survived the night. That small fact brings a quiet sense of relief. You sit up beneath the blanket. The cottage is cold, but it is not as cold as it could have been. The people around you are beginning to wake. Someone adds a small piece of wood to the hearth. The embers brighten. A flame appears. Morning begins again. You remain beside the fire for a while, letting the warmth return to your hands. Outside, the winter sky is pale. Another cold day is waiting. But something feels different. You have now spent several days inside this rhythm. You understand the cottage. You understand the fire. You understand the work. You no longer expect comfort to arrive automatically. You know that warmth has to be created. Food has to be prepared. Water has to be carried. Wood has to be gathered. Clothing has to be maintained. The house itself has to be cared for. Winter has become a collection of familiar tasks. You stand and begin preparing for the morning. The same clothing goes on. The same rough fabric. The same layers. You pull them close around your body. The fire is stronger now. Someone prepares the morning meal. The cottage fills with the smell of warm grain. You sit near the hearth and eat. The food is simple, but it is enough. You have begun to understand that enough can be a form of comfort. A full bowl, a dry blanket, a steady fire, a roof that does not leak, a door that closes properly. These things are not luxuries. They are what allow the household to continue. After the meal, you step outside. The cold greets you immediately, but you are prepared for it now. Your clothing is layered, your hands are covered. You know where the paths are. You know where the wood is stored. You know what work needs to be done. The village is quiet beneath the winter sky. Smoke rises from the cottages. The fields remain pale. The trees stand bare. But the village is alive. People are working. Animals are being fed. Water is being carried. Wood is being gathered. The same cycle continues. You walk toward the edge of the settlement. There is firewood to collect. You know that the pile at home will continue to shrink, so you begin gathering more. The work is tiring, but it no longer feels unfamiliar. You choose dry branches. You break smaller pieces. You carry them back. Then you repeat the process. There is something almost peaceful about repetitive work. The task does not require constant thought. Your hands know what to do. Your body follows the familiar movements. The winter air surrounds you. Your breath appears in front of your face. The trees are quiet. The village is behind you. For a moment, you stop and look across the landscape. It is cold. It is difficult. But it is also beautiful. The fields are covered with frost. The bare branches stand against the pale sky. Smoke rises in thin columns. The village looks small beneath the wide winter horizon. You realize that people have lived through seasons like this for generations. They have learned the patterns. They know when to prepare. They know what must be stored. They know how much wood is needed. They know how to make simple things last. Winter is not an unexpected disaster. It is part of the year. A difficult part, perhaps, but a familiar one. You return to the cottage with your bundle of wood. The fire is waiting. You place the branches beside the hearth. The household will use them later. Another task completed. You sit near the warmth. Your hands slowly recover. You look around the room. The cottage is still simple. The walls are still rough. The roof is still low. The furniture is still limited. But now it feels familiar. You know where everything belongs. You know the sounds of the building. You know how the fire behaves. You know how the wind sounds against the roof. You know how the door feels when it closes. You have learned the rhythm of this place, and that is perhaps the greatest comfort the cottage can offer. Not luxury, not abundance. Familiarity, the knowledge that you understand the world around you. The day continues. There will be more work, more cold, more nights, but you have learned how to meet them. You have learned that winter is survived one small task at a time. One piece of wood, one bucket of water, one warm meal, one repaired garment, one night beside the fire. The afternoon arrives. The light begins to fade again. You return inside. The fire is burning. The door closes. The cold remains outside. You sit beside the hearth. For a moment, you simply listen. The crackling of the wood, the quiet movements of the household, the wind beyond the walls. The sounds are familiar now. You no longer feel like a visitor. You feel as though you belong to the rhythm. Another evening begins. Another fire is prepared. Another meal is made. Another winter night approaches. And as the darkness settles around the cottage, you understand something that was not obvious when you first opened your eyes. The hardest part of winter is not one freezing morning. It is the repetition. The same cold returning. The same work waiting. The same need to gather, repair, prepare, and endure. But repetition also creates strength. Each morning teaches you what to do. Each evening teaches you what to save. Each cold night teaches you how to stay warm. And slowly, winter becomes something you know how to live with. You look into the fire. The flames are steady. Outside, the village is quiet. Inside, the cottage is warm enough. The winter afternoon is beginning to fade. You have spent another day inside the familiar rhythm of the cottage and village. The work has been ordinary. Wood, water, food, animals, repairs, fire. Yet now, as the light becomes weaker, you begin to notice something you had not fully understood when you first arrived. Winter changes the way people think about time. In summer, there is more daylight. The fields are active. People can remain outside for longer. Work can continue well into the evening. Winter is different. The sun disappears early. Darkness arrives quickly. The day has to be planned around the light. You stand near the doorway and look outside. The sky is pale. The fields are quiet. Smoke rises from the cottages. You know that soon everyone will return indoors. There is no reason to remain outside after dark, unless the work is necessary. You turn back toward the cottage. The fire is already burning. Someone has added a small piece of wood. The flames rise and brighten the room. You feel the warmth on your face. You step closer. The difference between inside and outside is immediate. The cold is still close to the walls, but the hearth creates a small area where you can comfortably remain. You sit down. For a moment, you simply watch the fire. The flames move without hurry. The wood slowly changes. The orange glow becomes brighter in one place and weaker in another. You have learned to read the fire. You can tell when it needs another piece of wood. You can see when the larger logs have begun to burn through. You know which branches are useful for starting a flame. These are simple skills, but they are important skills. The household depends on them. You look at the firewood beside the hearth. There is enough for tonight. That thought is comforting, but you also know that tomorrow will require more. Winter does not pause because the household is tired. The supply must be renewed. You think about the work that went into gathering the wood, walking into the trees, finding dry branches, cutting larger pieces, carrying them home, stacking them where they can remain dry. All of that work has become the warmth you feel now. The connection is clear. Work becomes fuel. Fuel becomes heat. Heat allows rest. Rest provides strength for more work. The cycle continues. You begin to understand why a peasant household could not separate work from comfort. The two were connected. A comfortable evening depended on work done earlier. A warm morning depended on preparation from the day before. A safe winter depended on preparations made months earlier. Everything reached backward. You look around the cottage. The same is true of the walls, the roof, the blankets, the food. Nothing appeared suddenly. Someone built the walls. Someone repaired the roof. Someone stored the food. Someone gathered the wood. The present moment is supported by work from the past. That idea makes the cottage feel different. It is not simply a room. It is the result of years of effort. Perhaps parts of it were repaired by previous generations. Perhaps some of the beams have been here for many years. Perhaps the same hearth has warmed many winters. You place your hand near the stone around the fire. It is warm. The warmth has been stored in the material. You move your hand slightly. The temperature changes. Again, you notice how precise the boundary between warmth and cold can be. A few inches closer, a few inches farther. The difference is noticeable. You begin to appreciate the fire in a way you never would have before. It is not simply something pleasant. It is necessary. The evening meal is prepared. The smell of food fills the room. Everyone gathers closer. The cottage becomes quieter. There is no need to rush. The work outside is finished for the day. The darkness has arrived. You eat slowly. The warmth of the food spreads through your body. You hold the bowl for a moment after finishing. The bowl itself has retained some heat. Even this small comfort feels valuable. After the meal, the household settles into the evening. Someone repairs clothing. Someone prepares tools for tomorrow. The children become quieter. The older members of the household rest. The fire continues burning. You look around the room. There is nothing spectacular here. No grand furniture. No decoration designed to impress. No bright lights. No separate rooms filled with possessions. But there is a sense of order. Everything has a place. Everything has a purpose. And everyone understands what must happen next. The night will continue. The fire will be watched. The door will remain closed. The blankets will be prepared. The household will sleep. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again. You listen to the wind outside. It has become stronger. The cottage creaks. The roof holds. The walls remain still. You feel the warmth of the hearth. For the first time, the repetition does not feel endless. It feels dependable. The same things happen because they need to happen. The same tasks return because they keep the household alive. Winter may be difficult, but the rhythm gives it structure. You sit quietly beside the fire. Outside, the fields disappear into darkness. Inside, the hearth continues to glow. The village becomes silent. Another winter evening passes, and you begin to realize that surviving the cold is not about defeating winter. It is about learning its rhythm, knowing when to gather, knowing when to work, knowing when to save, knowing when to rest, and knowing that tomorrow, when the light returns, the work will begin again. The fire burns steadily. You remain beside it for another quiet moment, knowing that the warmth you feel now began with work done long before this evening. Outside, winter continues. Inside, the household is ready for another night. The evening has become quiet again. You sit beside the hearth and listen to the small sounds of the cottage. The fire crackles. The wind moves beyond the walls. Someone shifts on the straw bedding. Then everything becomes still. You look at the flames and realize how much has changed since the first morning. At first, the cottage seemed dark and uncomfortable. The walls felt close. The straw bed felt unfamiliar. The cold seemed to enter from every direction. Now, the same room feels different. You know where the warmth gathers. You know where the drafts appear. You know how the fire sounds when it needs more wood. You know how to arrange the blankets. You know which clothing should be kept close to the hearth. The cottage has become familiar, and familiarity has made the winter easier to understand. You glance toward the sleeping area. The household is settling down. The day's work is finished. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, but tonight there is a quiet pause. You think about the things you have learned. The first lesson was simple. Warmth has to be created. It does not simply exist. The fire must be started. The wood must be gathered. The hearth must be watched. The door must be kept closed. The blankets must be used carefully. The second lesson is just as important. Nothing should be wasted. Every piece of wood has value. Every bowl of food matters. Every piece of cloth can be repaired. Every tool should be maintained. Every container should be protected. Winter makes waste more dangerous. There is no easy replacement. If something breaks, it must often be repaired. If something runs out, someone has to find more. That means the household must always think ahead. You look at the wood beside the hearth. There is enough for tonight. Tomorrow, more will be needed. You already know this. The thought no longer feels alarming. It is simply part of the routine. You have learned to think one day ahead, perhaps two, sometimes more. That is how winter is managed. Not by solving everything at once, by preparing for the next need. You listen to the wind again. It has become stronger. The cottage makes a quiet creaking sound. You look toward the roof. It holds. The walls hold. The door remains closed. The fire continues. You relax. There is comfort in knowing that the shelter is doing its job. It does not need to be perfect. It only needs to protect you well enough. You think about the roof. During summer, a small weakness might be inconvenient. In winter, it could become serious. A leak could make the bedding wet. A wet blanket would be harder to warm. A damaged wall could allow cold air inside. Everything matters more when the temperature falls. That is why repairs cannot wait forever. The household has to maintain the cottage throughout the year. Summer repairs help survive winter. Food stored months earlier helps survive winter. Wood gathered before the snow helps survive winter. The coldest nights are supported by work that happened long before they arrived. You find that idea strangely comforting. The present is connected to the past. Someone prepared for this night. Someone gathered the wood. Someone repaired the roof. Someone made the blanket. Someone stored the food. And now you are using those things. You sit closer to the hearth. The warmth touches your face. The firelight moves across the wall. For a moment, the cottage seems almost peaceful. Outside, the winter landscape is dark and frozen. Inside, there is light. Not much, but enough. You begin to understand why people might gather around the hearth even when they have nothing urgent to do. It is not only because of the warmth, it is because the fire gives the room a center. People naturally face it. They work beside it. They eat beside it. They talk beside it. They rest beside it. The fire brings the household together. You watch a small ember break away from the log. It glows briefly, then disappears. The flames settle. The room becomes darker. Someone adds another piece of wood. The fire grows again. You smile quietly. You know what will happen next. The same pattern will continue. The fire will burn. The wood will become smaller. The warmth will spread. The household will sleep. Morning will come. The fire will be revived, and another day will begin. There is something almost reassuring about the repetition. The winter may be difficult, but the routine provides a sense of control. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control how long the winter will last. But you can gather wood. You can repair the door. You can store food. You can protect the fire. You can prepare the blankets. You can do the next necessary thing. And sometimes that is enough. You lie down on the straw. A blanket covers you. The fire remains visible in the darkness. Your body is tired. Your mind is quiet. You listen to the wind. The cottage holds. The hearth glows. The household sleeps. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will come. But for now, you are warm enough, and the winter night can pass quietly around you. You remain awake for a little longer. The cottage is not silent, but its sounds are gentle. The fire gives a soft crack. The wind brushes the roof. Someone turns beneath a blanket. These sounds no longer feel strange. They are simply the sounds of home. You remember how cold the cottage felt when you first woke. You remember how unfamiliar the straw felt beneath you. You remember stepping outside and feeling the winter air against your face. Now you know what to expect. You know that the cold will return each morning. You know that the fire will become the center of the evening. You know that work will begin again when daylight comes. The night is almost over. You do not know exactly when you first noticed the change. Perhaps it is the sound of the wind becoming softer. Perhaps it is the faint light beginning to appear around the doorway. Or perhaps it is simply the feeling that the darkness has started to loosen its hold on the cottage. You open your eyes. The fire is still alive. Only a few glowing embers remain, but they are enough to remind you that the household has made it through another cold night. You lie still for a moment. The blanket is warm around your body. The straw beneath you is familiar now. The cottage smells of smoke, wood, wool, and the remains of yesterday's meal. Nothing has changed, and yet, somehow, everything feels different. You have become accustomed to the place. You know what the morning will bring. Soon someone will rise. The fire will be revived. Water will be warmed. Food will be prepared. The door will open. Cold air will enter, and another winter day will begin. You sit up slowly. The movement makes the straw rustle beneath you. Across the room, another person is already awake. A small branch is placed on the embers. The fire catches. Orange light appears. The room begins to brighten. You hold your hands toward the warmth. The heat is gentle. It is not enough to warm the entire cottage, but it does not need to be. It only needs to give you enough comfort to begin moving. You stand. The floor is cold. You put on your clothing quickly. The fabric feels rough and cool against your skin. You pull the outer layer around yourself. Then you return to the hearth. A small pot is warming. The household is preparing another simple breakfast. You look toward the doorway. A thin line of morning light is visible. The village is waking. Soon the first people will step outside. You know what awaits them. Cold paths, frozen fields, animals, water, wood, work. The same things that have filled every day. You eat your morning meal. It is simple, but it is warm. And now you understand why warmth matters so much. The food warms your hands. The fire warms your face. The clothing protects your body. The cottage protects you from the wind. The blanket protected you during the night. No single thing is enough. Together they are enough. That may be the most important lesson winter has taught you. Survival is rarely about one great source of protection. It is about many small protections working together. You finish eating. The bowl is cleared. The fire is checked. The door is opened. Cold air rushes inside. You step outside. The morning is brighter now. The winter sky is pale and clear. Frost covers the ground. The village is beginning to move. Smoke rises from the cottages. People walk along the paths. Animals make quiet sounds from their shelters. Someone carries a bucket. Someone carries wood. Someone leads an animal toward a feeding area. This scene no longer feels strange. You know where the paths lead. You know which direction the trees are. You know where the water is. You know how far the fields stretch. You know which cottage is yours. The village has become familiar. You walk toward the trees to gather more wood. The work is still tiring. Your arms still ache. Your fingers still become cold. But you understand the task now. You select the dry branches. You break the smaller pieces. You carry the larger ones. You build a bundle. Then you return. There is no dramatic moment, only repetition. But repetition has taught you something. The ordinary tasks are the foundation of life here. Without them, the cottage would not remain warm. Without them, the household would not eat. Without them, the animals would not survive. Without them, winter would become much harder. You return to the cottage. The wood is placed beside the hearth. The fire waits. You sit down. Your hands begin to warm. You look around the room. The walls are still rough. The roof is still low. The furniture is still simple. But now you understand what the cottage represents. It is not simply shelter. It is the center of a life built around preparation. Every object has a history. Every repair has a reason. Every piece of firewood represents effort. Every warm meal represents stored food and careful planning. Every night of sleep represents a day of work that made that sleep possible. You think about the winter again. It is still cold. It is still demanding. But it no longer feels completely hostile. You have learned its rules. You know what it asks from you. Prepare, gather, repair, save, work, rest, repeat. The pattern continues. The afternoon will come, then evening, then another night. The fire will burn, the wood will shrink, the blankets will warm, the door will close, and the same cycle will begin again. But now, you understand that the repetition is not meaningless. It is what keeps the household alive. You sit beside the hearth and listen. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the village continues its work. The winter sun moves slowly across the sky. For a moment, you simply watch the flames. You think about how strange it would have seemed on your first morning. A small fire, a rough blanket, a straw bed, a wooden bowl, a simple cottage. They seemed like signs of hardship. Now you see something else. They are signs of adaptation. People have learned how to live with what they have. They have learned how to make simple materials useful. They have learned how to survive a season that cannot be changed. And you have learned the same lesson. Winter does not have to become comfortable. It only has to become manageable. You place another piece of wood on the fire. The flame rises. Warmth spreads across your hands. The final evening has arrived. The cottage is quiet, and the winter darkness has settled across the village once again. You sit beside the hearth and watch the fire. For so many days, this has been the center of your world. The same flames, the same wooden walls, the same straw bedding, the same cold waiting outside the door. At first, the cottage felt unfamiliar. Now it feels almost comforting. You understand its sounds, you understand its warmth, you understand its limitations, and you understand the work required to keep it alive. You look around the room. The walls are rough, the roof is low, the furniture is simple. There are no luxuries, but everything has a purpose. The hearth provides warmth, the fire provides light, the blankets provide protection during sleep, the walls block the wind, The roof keeps out the weather. The wooden bowls hold food. The tools make work possible. Nothing is unnecessary. Nothing is simply decorative. Every object belongs to a system designed around survival. You think about the first morning. You woke in darkness. You felt the cold immediately. The straw beneath you was unfamiliar. The air felt sharp. The fire was weak. You did not yet understand how the household worked. Now you do. You know that the fire must be protected. You know that wood must be gathered before it is needed. You know that food must be stored before winter becomes severe. You know that clothing must be repaired before it becomes useless. You know that the door must close properly. You know that the roof must hold. And you know that every small task matters. The winter has taught you that comfort is not something that simply appears. It is something built slowly. A warm room begins with a tree cut weeks or months earlier. A warm meal begins with food stored before the fields become frozen. A dry bed begins with a roof that has been maintained. A warm night begins with a blanket that has been repaired. Even sleep depends on work. You look at the fire again. The flames are steady. A small piece of wood collapses into the embers. You hear the familiar crack. You know exactly what it means. The fire is consuming the fuel. Soon another piece will be needed. You reach toward the woodpile. There is still enough. You place one log onto the hearth. The flames rise. The cottage brightens. For a moment, the entire room seems warmer. You hold your hands toward the fire. Your fingers relax. The warmth spreads slowly. Outside, the wind moves through the village. You can hear it against the roof, but the sound no longer frightens you. You know the cottage can handle an ordinary winter night. The walls will hold. The roof will remain overhead. The fire will continue. The household will sleep, and morning will come. You think about the village outside. The other cottages are also glowing with firelight. Small points of warmth appear in the darkness. Each one represents another household doing the same things: gathering, cooking, repairing, saving, resting, preparing. The whole village is connected by the same season. Winter has made everyone more careful, more aware of fuel, more aware of food, more aware of shelter, more aware of the weather. You realize that this is what makes the season difficult. It is not simply the cold temperature. It is the constant attention required. Every day asks something from you. Every night requires preparation. But there is also strength in that rhythm. The tasks are familiar. The work is shared. The household knows what to do. And because everyone knows what to do, winter becomes manageable. You sit quietly beside the hearth. The evening meal has been eaten. The bowls have been cleared. The tools have been stored. The animals are sheltered. The door is closed. Everything is ready for the night. You look toward the sleeping area. The straw bedding waits beneath the blankets. Soon you will lie down again, the same way you did on the first night. But you will not be the same person who first lay there. You understand the cottage now. You understand why the fire matters. You understand why wood matters. You understand why food matters. You understand why simple repairs matter. You understand why people gathered around the hearth. You understand why winter demanded so much preparation. The cottage has taught you something simple. Life does not always depend on great achievements. Sometimes it depends on doing small things correctly, again and again. Gather enough wood, store enough food, keep the roof sound, mend the blanket, close the door, protect the fire, rest, then begin again. You look at the flames. The fire burns softly. The room is warm enough. Outside, the winter night continues. But now, the cold feels distant. Not because it has disappeared, because you have learned how to live with it. You lie down on the straw. The blanket covers you. The fire remains visible nearby. You listen to the wind. You hear the roof creak. You hear the fire crackle. You hear the quiet breathing of the household. These sounds have become familiar. They are the sounds of home. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will come. The fire will be revived. The door will open. The cold air will enter. The village will wake. The work will begin again. But for now, none of that matters. For now you are warm. The cottage is standing. The fire is burning. The household is safe. And the long winter night is passing quietly. You breathe slowly. The warmth of the blanket surrounds you. The last glow of the hearth rests against the walls. Outside, frost covers the fields. The village sleeps beneath the dark sky. Inside, the little cottage holds its small circle of warmth. And as your thoughts begin to fade, you realize that this was never really a story about escaping the cold.